Cancer is one of the most feared words in any language. Right now, 1 in 2 people in the developed world will receive a cancer diagnosis at some point in their lifetime. It kills more people every year than any war in recorded history. We spend hundreds of billions of dollars trying to understand it, treat it, and survive it. But here is a question that almost nobody thinks to ask. Did ancient humans, the people who lived for 300,000 years before hospitals, before processed food, before factories and pollution and sedentary office jobs, did they get cancer too? And if the answer is yes, how often? And if the answer is almost never, then what does that tell us about the world we built? The evidence is buried in ancient bones. And what it reveals is one of the most uncomfortable truths in all of modern medicine. When cancer grows in the body, it does not always stay in soft tissue. Certain cancers invade bone, and bone, unlike muscle or organ, can survive for tens of thousands of years. If ancient humans had cancer at anything close to modern rates, we would find it everywhere we dig. We don't. In 2010, Professor Rosalie David and Professor Michael Zimmerman of the University of Manchester published a landmark study in the journal Nature Reviews Cancer. They examined hundreds of Egyptian mummies and thousands of skeletal remains from ancient populations across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Their conclusion was striking. Malignant tumors were extremely rare in the ancient record, so rare that the researchers stated directly, "Cancer is a disease of modern civilization." Of all the mummies examined, only a tiny handful showed any evidence of malignant tumors. This matters enormously because the preservation conditions in Egypt were ideal. If cancer had been common, it would have left evidence. The absence of evidence in this case is the evidence. Professor Zimmerman put it plainly. In industrialized societies, cancer is second only to cardiovascular disease as a cause of death. In ancient populations, it was almost invisible. Before you conclude that ancient humans were completely immune, there is something important you need to know. Cancer is not a modern invention. It is as old as life itself. In 2016, researchers from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa made a discovery that reframed everything. Inside a cave in the cradle of humankind, the same region that gave us some of our oldest hominin fossils, they found a foot bone belonging to a human ancestor. The bone dated back 1.7 million years. And inside it was unmistakable evidence of osteosarcoma, bone cancer. This was the oldest cancer ever found in the human fossil record. Our ancestors were getting cancer before our species even fully existed. They also found a much younger specimen, a 250,000-year-old hominin vertebra, showing evidence of a benign tumor called an osteoid osteoma. 2 different individuals. 2 different cancers. Separated by more than 1 million years. So cancer has always existed in human biology. The question is not whether ancient humans could get cancer. They could. The question is why they got it so rarely compared to us. Egypt gives us the most detailed window into ancient health because the dry desert climate preserved bodies in extraordinary detail. Researchers have been unwrapping and scanning mummies for over a century, and the cancer evidence is consistent across every study. A 2011 scan conducted on over 200 mummies at the Cairo Museum using CT scanning technology found only a single case of a tumor that appeared malignant. 1 case. In over 200 individuals. In 2014, paleopathologist Tony Waldron at University College London conducted a statistical analysis comparing cancer rates in ancient skeletal remains with modern populations. He accounted for the fact that ancient people died younger, which should reduce cancer rates naturally, since many cancers develop in old age. Even after controlling for age at death, cancer in ancient populations was dramatically lower than anything we see today. The mummies also revealed something else. They showed evidence of parasites, infections, dental disease, injuries, and arthritis in abundance. The ancient world was not a healthy paradise. People suffered from many things. But cancer appeared almost nowhere. This is where the science becomes deeply uncomfortable for modern life. The researchers who have studied this question most carefully point to a cluster of factors that essentially did not exist before industrialization. And taken together, they read like a description of the average modern day. Processed food. In a 2015 study published in the journal Cell, Researchers identified a direct link between refined sugar, processed carbohydrates, and tumor growth. Cancer cells consume glucose at a rate 200 times higher than normal cells. Ancient humans ate no refined sugar, no processed grains, no seed oils. Their diet contained almost nothing that cancer cells prefer to feed on. Air pollution. A 2023 report from the World Health Organization confirmed that outdoor air pollution alone causes 4.2 million deaths per year, a significant portion from lung cancer. Ancient humans breathed smoke from campfires, which is a real carcinogen, but for a few hours a day, not continuously for their entire lives inside polluted cities. Chronic inflammation. Modern processed diets, chronic stress, sedentary behavior, and sleep disruption all drive systemic inflammation in the body, and chronic inflammation is one of the primary mechanisms through which cancer develops. Ancient humans moved constantly, slept in 2 natural phases aligned with sunlight, had intense social bonds that reduce cortisol, and ate anti-inflammatory whole foods. Their bodies were running at an inflammatory baseline far lower than any modern population ever studied. Carcinogens in the environment. Industrial chemicals, pesticides, plastics, synthetic hormones in food and water. None of this existed before the last 200 years. We are the first humans to live inside a chemical environment our bodies never evolved to process. And perhaps most importantly, obesity. Excess body fat is now classified as a direct carcinogen. It produces estrogen and inflammatory compounds that feed certain cancers. Obesity as a population-level phenomenon simply did not exist in hunter-gatherer life. You cannot be significantly obese while walking 14 kilometers a day and eating whole unprocessed foods. If cancer was rare, what killed ancient people? The bones and mummies tell us clearly. Infection was the great killer. Bacterial infections that today require a simple antibiotic but in the ancient world could kill within days. Injury, a broken bone that became infected, a wound from a hunt, a difficult childbirth. Parasites, tooth abscesses that spread to the brain. Childbirth complications. These were brutal ways to die. Nobody is suggesting ancient life was better in every way. Average life expectancy was significantly lower, not because everyone died young but because infant and child mortality were catastrophically high. The adults who survived into their 30s, 40s, and beyond were often remarkably healthy by any skeletal measure we have. And critically, they were not dying of cancer. They were not dying of heart disease. They were not dying of type 2 diabetes. The diseases that now fill our hospitals and account for the majority of deaths in the developed world were essentially absent from their lives. So here is the complete picture. Ancient humans could get cancer. We have the 1.7 million-year-old bone to prove it. But they got it at rates so low compared to modern populations that researchers from the University of Manchester felt confident calling cancer a disease of modern civilization. The bones do not lie. And what the bones say is this: the most feared disease of our time is not an inevitable feature of being human. It is, in significant part, a consequence of the world we built. Processed food that cancer cells prefer to feed on. Chronic inflammation from stress, sedentary living, and disrupted sleep. Environmental carcinogens that have existed for less than 2 centuries. An obesity epidemic in a species that evolved to move. Ancient humans did not have chemotherapy. They did not have oncologists or clinical trials or targeted immunotherapy. But they also did not need them at anything close to the rate we do. And that might be the most important thing the ancient bones have ever told us about ourselves.